What is up, disc golfers? Today on Iceberg TV, I'm really excited to introduce a new series where I talk about basically who I think is the best three players on that roster, and then basically explain what I think sets them apart from, the rest of the people, not only that are sponsored by the same company, but what separates them from all players in general. So, number 3 on this list is going to be our boy James Conrad. Now, we all know James Conrad for his big AVR putter shots, and his Circle 2 putting would obviously be his, his biggest strengths. And the thing that is always amazing about Conrad is he makes up for his lack of having a forehand at all with just making Circle 2 putts. So James Conrad, instead of throwing a forehand, would rather just throw a backhand to Circle 2 and then, give himself a Circle 2 putt. And James Conrad's ability to throw putters has put him in a very unique position to be able to birdie a lot of holes that not a lot of players are able to birdie. And then we also love James Conrad for his huge run-ups. So we can see he's taking a lot of steps here. He's ripping on probably what looks to be his MD4. And he really likes that purple MD4. I think that's what it was. But James Conrad's obviously one of the top players in disc golf right now, and he's finishing up near the top of the leaderboards in most of the tournaments we've had this year, and he's had a really good showing up to this point. And there's probably nobody who's throwing their putters the way that James is throwing his putters, with the amount of power and the amount of hyzer and how much late flip he's getting on his putters. It's just not recreatable by most normal people. But James Conrad's able to do it what seems to be with relative ease. And then obviously his Circle 2 putting makes him really exciting to watch as well. So instead of learning a forehand and, finding himself in Circle 1 on a lot more opportunities, he just goes backhand to Circle 2 and, doesn't have a problem with that, and he just puts it in. So between the hair, the Circle 2 putting, the big AVR shots, we have a very special play on our hands, and James Conrad's going to be good for a really long time. So number 2 on this list is going to be Ricky Iwasaki. So Ricky Iwasaki, he has a very different game from James Conrad. Ricky was really originally a big forehand, 90% of his shots kind of guy. So Ricky was throwing mostly sidearms when he started playing disc golf for Prodigy's pro team. He was throwing a lot of X1s and D1s with a lot of forehands. He was always a really good putter, but he's sort of slowly developed his backhand, and you can see in this clip right now was still developing his backhand at this point in time. His form looked a lot different then than it does now, and his putt looks a lot different then than it does now. But his sidearm has been really what's been separating him, and now at this point in his game, he's developed an elite backhand as well. So you find yourself with a guy who can make Circle 2 putts, has an elite backhand, an elite forehand. And Ricky has one of the best roller games on tour, and he's totally underrated with how well he rolls his wraiths. He's so good at rolling the wraiths. Let's look at this shot. It's just so good. That's a bomb. That's such a tough putt. That's ridiculous. And I think if there's someone who's better than James Conrad at Circle 2 putting, Ricky could be that guy. Ricky's a really tall, athletic guy, used to play baseball, and I think that's probably where his sidearm originally came from. But really, Ricky's Circle 2 putting and his ability to be clutch late in tournaments and battle his way back and fight for the win, I think that separates him from James Conrad as well. I think Ricky is leaps and bounds ahead of James as far as being able to clutch up at the end of tournaments, or putting together just like the hottest round you've ever seen, like close to an 1100 rated round, and coming up from behind and finding a way to almost win big tournaments where you think he didn't even stand a chance. And I think that's heavily due to his Circle 2 putting, his ability to throw rollers, and his ability to throw high-level forehands and backhands. No, he didn't ace it, did he? No, it's really close. We'll just have a look at one more sidearm here. Because I think if James Conrad had Ricky's sidearm, I think arguably James Conrad would be a better player than Ricky. But right now, Ricky's going to have that sidearm, so obviously going to give him an advantage over the James Conrads and the backhand players of the world. especially when he has the circle 2 putting to match. So watch this one more putt, and we'll move on to the final player on my list. So the last guy on this list is going to be Calvin Heinberg. So Calvin Heinberg is one of the hottest players on tour right now, as far as not only in tour points, but in play in general. So Calvin Heinberg has been finishing in the top 2 in several tournaments already this year, a couple pro tour events. He's always battling for the lead, and I think that's his consistent play is due to his consistent ability to throw big power on hyzer 90% of the time. So Calvin always plays the high percentage play. The biggest part of Calvin's game, aside from his ability to throw just any distance on hyzer, is his putting. Calvin's a really confident putter, and he's able to make putts from inside circle 1 with great consistency and circle 2. Calvin has a better sidearm than James Conrad, but a worse sidearm than Ricky Iwasaki. And Calvin Heinberg doesn't really throw rollers, but when you can throw, 550, 600 foot hyzers, it doesn't really matter if you can roll a disc or not. There's not many holes that are going to demand more distance than what he's able to do with just a normal hyzer. So Calvin has a really big advantage of growing up and playing in Florida, where pretty much 90% of the courses in Florida have low ceilings and they force you to throw very low driven shots. So what I mean by that is when you play disc golf in Florida, you can't really throw big flexing shots like what you just saw here. You really have to be able to throw straight discs just on a straight line and be able to throw them very far as well. So when you see Calvin throw his Innova Champion Eagles, he's just so good at throwing low driven straight line 400 foot shots, which unless you're forced to throw those shots all the time, you probably wouldn't learn to do it as well as he did. But because he was playing in Florida, and I've spent a lot of time playing in Florida, and I found that I was throwing my T-birds, my Eagles, my Sidewinders, stuff that I can throw really straight and low, and those are the discs that were going to give me success. So Calvin having that background of being able to throw those low-driven shots with power is what separates him from other players. So he obviously is a big power thrower and then a really good putter, but what separates Calvin is his ability to throw those low-driven shots, especially with his Champion Eagles. He's just unmatched with that. So between his Destroyer hyzers and his Eagle straight shots, I think right now Calvin is Innova's top player, and I think until Ricky can pick up a big win, if he can win a Pro Tour event, then my 1 and 2 will switch. But right now, as far as Innova Disc Golf goes, Calvin's my number 1 pick for Innova, and I think he is the best player for Innova right now, and I'm really excited to see if he can win a couple events this year. Definitely try and win a Pro Tour event. I'd love to see that out of Calvin. Leave in the comments section down below who your favorite is. If you think I'm right about Ricky versus Calvin, leave it in the comments section down below who your top 3 is. If you want to become a patron, click the link in the description below. Thank you for watching. This is Iceberg TV, and take care.